Yeah, we'll be turning something on. And I believe that we're live here at the Sales SAP podcast.
To the Sales SAP podcast, where we hit you with the hard truths, bold strategies, and expert insights you need to master the art of selling. And who's leading the charge? Meet your hosts, Rick Denley, Simon Hares, and Scott Donald. Get ready for real talk, expert advice, and game-changing strategies. Because in sales, you don't just play, you slap. Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's dive into the Sales SAP podcast. Thanks for being here on a Friday in August. Looking forward to your comments in the comments section. We got a great guest for you today. And he's coming from, I'll say over the pond, and I'm not sure if that'll offend Simon or not. We'll find out shortly. But I want to introduce Paul Caffrey to you today. Paul mentions here, for individual contributors aspiring to take leadership route, Paul's training is the go-to resource, says some of his testimonials. Paul Caffrey reveals the hidden habits elite sales professionals use to prospect better, sell more, and get promoted faster, which many of us want. This unlocks the potential of salespeople and sales teams to outperform the competition. He shared the framework, The Work Before the Work, co-authored with Phil Jones. And this is an amazing book he's going to tell us a little bit more about as well that you got to get a copy of. If you're a sales manager or leader, be sure that every member of your sales team owns, reads, and uses this book. I want to get right into it now. Paul, welcome to the Sales SAP podcast.
Good day.
Rick, thanks for having me. Delighted to be here, and fair play. You did a lot of research for the intro. I am very impressed.
Well, that's what we do here because preparation is key, and we're going to learn more about that from you specifically. But right now, I just want to really have you share a little bit more about yourself. Where are you dialing in from here, and share about Paul?
So dialing in from Dublin, Ireland. So yeah, I am across the pond, as you say, working in the sales profession for 18 years. And over the last 4 or 5 years have been working with companies, helping them to, as you've mentioned, build out their prospecting, build out their sales engine so they can have those repeatable sales happening again and again. And importantly, also showing them how to hire elite sales professionals and turn the people they have into elite professionals so that it just makes things a little bit easier for them to get that repeatable revenue. And I've been very fortunate to publish a book with Phil M. Jones, The Work Before the Work. We spent 3 years working on that, and it is a thinking framework that will allow you to be prepared for the moments that matter, whether it is an unexpected conversation with a prospect you bump into at a conference, or if it's the biggest deal you're working on, which is really going to make your year. And it covers the 3 most important things, I think, for sales professionals, and that is prospecting, being able to build up your pipeline, being able to progress your deals and close them. And as you mentioned at the start, Rick, getting promoted, because I see far too many salespeople think when I get my number, then I'll start working on promotion. They hit their number towards the end of the year, but they've left it too late to be prepared to be a front runner, to be a number 1 candidate for promotion. And they end up spending 2-3 years longer in roles than they should, and ultimately not realizing the amount of value and revenue they could for themselves if they were a little bit more prepared to take ownership of their career.
Brilliant. That's a great area that we haven't had somebody speak about before, is that pathway. And we know that the up and coming generations, when we look at them, millennials and Gen Zs especially, they want to know their pathway in growth within an organization. And leaders, we have to be sure that we're showing them that. And that's one of the best ways to retain them as well. Paul, thanks for that great introduction. We're very excited to have you on the show here. And I know that the guys are chomping at the bit to dive in as well and ask you some questions, whether it be about this great type of training that you bring. You do some speaking from stages as well. And of course, your great book that you wrote also. So I'm going to pass it over to co-host Scott. Scott, how you doing today? And what do you got for Paul?
Good morning, Rick. Good morning, everybody. So, I love this concept of the work before the work. And I don't want to pump Rick's tires, but Rick talks about how he prepared for a fight to support raising money for cancer and how that took 8 months of preparation. And I think to Rick's point, and to obviously to your theme here, Paul, that this notion of preparation and having a framework is probably one of the things that most sales organizations and can benefit from. So my question here is that, your LinkedIn profile, you talk about having a prospecting and a sales playbook, which I imagine most organizations don't have. So in your experience, why is it so important to put time and effort into building these playbooks for either the individual salesperson or the sales leader themselves?
Well, the importance, it comes down to how repeatable it is. And for me, most salespeople who are working in the profession, particularly if you're working in the profession for a few years, most people know what to do. But the big problem is they don't always do it. And they might need help improving how they do it. But fundamentally, when we look at that, if we don't have a playbook, if we don't have basically a path to take our deals through that we follow, then we're in the position of making mistakes, seeing our sales cycles get more elongated.
Yeah.
Somebody responded well to when I mentioned this in the demo before, so I'll mention that in all my demos going forward. It becomes bloated and we just don't get the results that we could. And I was speaking to a CEO yesterday, and one of the things I had to call out was your sales team. They sell via distributors, but they're not speaking with the distributors on a quarterly basis. They're not talking about building pipeline and progressing deals. There's not even meetings booked to regularly speak with these distributors, and that's a key way for you to go to market. Yeah. And his response is, but that's 101. I'm like, it absolutely is 101, but your guys do it sometimes and other times they don't. And this
I'm even surprised at quarterly, Paul. I'm even surprised at quarterly. Should that not be monthly?
Well, what you should have a cycle to go through on a quarterly basis. So at the start of the quarter, we review what happened last quarter, and you're quite right. And you're speaking throughout. So every couple of weeks, then you're speaking, finding out the customers they're chatting with, and you're very agreed. We're going to try close X amount of revenue. We're going to try create so many opportunities. We're going to try progress the deals. Maybe you're not always going to close deals on a quarterly basis with bigger companies, but not having structure. And again, the people have delivered and they've done very well and they know what to do, but they don't have that structure or that framework to actually do it. And we've all seen the difference when you show up prepared for something and when you don't.
Yeah. And that repeatable process that you mentioned, put it in place. If you're going to have meetings at the beginning and end of the quarter, maybe you have one halfway through the quarter as well to review large opportunities, because really that supplier salesperson and a distributor salesperson should be working hand in hand to understand the territory that they're covering perhaps and the industries, and making sure. I remember going into clients where they love to see supplier and distributor together because they're working together in their best interest. And I got a little bit out of that from your book as well, in that preparing for calls piece, which was so important also. So great start. Great question, Scott. Thanks for sharing your answer, Paul. Simon, over to you. What do you got for our friend Paul here today?
I just want to pick up on this this framework of being able to stay in touch frequently and constantly talking to people to build relationships. I was watching something on LinkedIn the other day, and the guy who I was watching, his name has completely gone out of my head, but he says he's got this dance that he does, which is around questions equal conversations, equal relationship, equal opportunities, equal sales, this 5-step dance. And it's an amazing thing that we do when we start asking right questions and we start having conversations with people. But of course, once you've got business, or once you're chasing business and you want to stay in touch regularly, there's this argument between, do I stay in touch and just have a chat to stay in touch? Do I only get in touch when I really want something? And sometimes customers say, well, you only get in touch when you want something. There's an argument for both, because actually, if there is an opportunity, I believe that actually I'm going to get in contact with you when I want something, because ultimately I'm going to help you do it and help you make more money, rather than just ring you up and chew the fat over nothing for 5 minutes. I don't know. I think it's an argument for both. What do you think, Paul?
I think there should be a structured and an unstructured way that you tackle this. And I guess a good example of that is, if you have a list of all the people that you've ever sold to over the course of your career, or people that you've worked alongside, having a structured way to reach out to them and maintain that can be quite important. And that could include some existing clients or some people that you're working with at the moment. And a very simple way to do this is simply in a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, throw in 90 names, and then each day shoot a message to 3 people. And basically, you'll get into a WhatsApp conversation. You might pick up the phone, you might just send them an email, whatever it turns out to be. And then you just put them at the bottom of the list. And the next day you do the next 3. And what you'll notice is, because you're looking at that list and you'll realize, oh yeah, Simon, I want to drop a note to Simon. You'll see something that will be interesting, or something will pop into your head. And for example, I was chatting with Mark Hunter recently, and he popped up in conversation, and mentioned that to you, and we have a little bit of back and forth. Those things is what kind of keeps that relationship going when you don't actually have a specific reason to reach out. The other thing I would add, though, if you have sold to somebody, you really want to see them achieve the value that you are delivering. And so for some products, it's quite quick. For others, it takes a little bit of time. There could be implementation. There could be, a long time for that to come along. But we do want to keep speaking with them, even if it's a case of it's a 15-minute check-in every couple of weeks, or if it's something else. And what the best do, and I noticed this time and time again, they don't just show up and talk about the weather and the sport or whatever else.
Yeah.
They're thinking about, what's that other person looking to achieve, and how could I actually help them? So they might share a report, they might share some insight. I might mention, I was speaking to someone the other day who had a similar challenge to this, and they look to bring value. And when you look at the top performers and the people that you've just seen outsell everybody else, they're always thinking of the other person in those conversations. And that's what we want to think about, is having the person delighted to speak with you.
Yeah, and that's why good customers will take. Sorry, Simon. Will actually take your call, because they know Paul's going to bring value every time. Whether you're phoning, coming by to see them, you're going to bring some sort of value to them. Simon?
I think as well that when you're ringing and you're going in it with an agenda, so you understand what that customer wants, there's some great stuff around. There was a book that came out that everyone's heard of, The Challenger Sale. And the Challenger Sale is interesting because your approach will enable you to find out what that customer is seeking from you in added value. So if you're going in as the problem solver, and then you're going back checking in on problems you have solved and problems people have, the relationships that people have, what have you, then you can pick up on clues on what people want. And that preparation that you can do there, I think, is gold. And you can really use some good stuff there.
Nice. Fantastic.
I've got a question for Paul as well. So, Paul, when you think about those people that actually do get really good results as salespeople, they do tend to, everything they touch turns to gold in some way. They've got the gift of the gab. They do convert. They're great. But actually, they don't really put in any effort in preparation. They just rock up and they get the results. What would your advice be on those people?
Well, we see that, and it's amazing. And we've all seen people who are great speakers. And what it comes down to is, you tend to see when things are going well, you tend to see when people win. But what we want to think about is, there's probably a lot more being done there that maybe we don't realize. And I would suspect that in some cases, there is a little bit of preparation, a little bit of work being done behind the scenes. And in other situations, if you ask that person what they do and how are they achieving it, they won't even be able to explain it to you. Well, I talk to my customers, I sell, that's what I'm here to do. But what you'll probably find is, subconsciously, they know their product. They've got very great retention. They're able to hone in on the key questions that need to be answered and land those points. Their follow-up is probably really solid. They're probably sending a message in advance to make sure that the person is ready for them, or confirming the appointment. So the people who tend to have that piece, they are doing a lot of this work subconsciously, and they're doing it to a high standard. And they're not in a position to be able to articulate that to us. The good news is, for everyone else, that can be learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
experience.
true.
It's like riding the sales bike, isn't it? Once you know to ride a bike, you always know, and you don't necessarily think about how you're doing it. In sales, we just tend to do these things. It's often those people that are most interested in trying to develop as mentors and sales coaches for their colleagues as well, so that we can pull down those skills and actually say, right, stop, what are you doing? Now share that really good stuff, as long as that person wants to do it, because a lot of the time they're going, I just want to get out there saying, I'm not coaching anybody.
That's the point I wanted to make, Simon, too. I think that some of the top salespeople that are true hunters and really doing well, they kind of blow it off. Oh, it's just what I do. Meanwhile, they have a very structured approach to it. There are a few people that, as you say, just because of gift of the gab and so on, or some sort of natural salesperson that can walk in and close business. They've acquired these skills, like Paul said, over time. And they might not be able to articulate them. And if they're not in a mentorship or leadership role, they don't care to. They're on their own. We know that true hunter mentality of a salesperson. But if you can see behind the scenes as to what they're doing and extract some of it, I'm sure it'd be a benefit to many people.
I think that what we're hitting on here, there are some, we were talking a little bit of football before we came on, not American football, but real football. And I think what you're talking about is that when
that's the audience just dived off a cliff.
Yeah. Hello, is anybody there? Hello, anyone?
Yeah.
But this idea that some people just naturally get into a process, and they don't even, like, if you were a really good golfer, you would probably have a hard time describing to somebody how to set up and take a good golf swing because they don't think about it. And there's some themes that you've said here, Paul, a few times, like this notion of structure has come up a couple of times. This idea of a repeatable process, not process, but process, because that's how we speak here. And I think that it feels to me like what you're hitting on is that a lot of our Sorry?
We say process as well.
In Canada, we say process. In the States, they say process. But Simon, I was going to make a really Simon, I'm making a really important point, and you just killed my momentum. How do you feel?
I'm sorry. I stopped listening.
Hey, focus.
I am trying to delve into something that Paul's made a good point about here, Simon. So allow me to be professional for a moment, if I can.
Okay.
Oh, by all means, hang on a minute.
There we go. Zoom in here. But this idea of structure and repeatable process. So recently, Paul, you made a post kind of echoing this around how preparation has two sides. So there's the prepared ownership and the prepared execution. I just had an idea. Can you expand a little bit about, in terms of this whole preparation, having structure and a process, what is this notion of prepared ownership and prepared execution all about?
What it comes down to is, when we're thinking about preparation, we plan for success, but we're preparing for chaos. And even if we take a step back and think about the football analogy, right? If you think about, if you played any sport, when things are going well and you're winning, you tend to see all players play quite well, and they can score, they can do whatever. But what you really see is, what someone's really made of is when the team is losing. So if the team is losing, who's the person who steps up and drags along that performance of everybody else? Right. Who's the one who comes along and they can sense danger, or they can see an opportunity to score, and they'll get themselves into that position to do it. They'll push themselves that bit further. If we talk about prepared ownership and prepared execution, the ownership aspect of it is you figuring out, what do I need to do in this next meeting? What do I need to achieve? How am I going to achieve that? What's the current situation? So, for example, have I been invited in, and am I in a good place here? Or have I cold called and by hook or by crook managed to get my seat at the table here, and I'm up against a very, very strong incumbent? Then it's really setting you in the place that that, right, these are the challenges that I need to take on. This is what I need to own. And we can do that preparation, we can do that research, we can be ready, but then we have to execute it. Yeah. We have to ask the question. You've brought me in, you've got a great relationship with your current supplier. Why would you even think about taking time to change? It's going to be a tremendous amount of work and effort for you and your team. And if you've done the preparation, it allows you to ask those questions, which will really help you get to what's important for the customer, as opposed to not doing that and maybe just discovering what they're using and who's in place while you're in the meeting. And then you can run out of time and not get to those real issues. So preparing is important, but then using it, acting on it, asking questions based on what you've done is the most important part. And I see a lot of people tend to shy away or let that moment pass. If you feel like you should ask a question, you probably should ask that question.
So there's a couple things from there. So one, I love the idea of asking. I believe that curiosity is one of the sales superpowers. And part of what I'm hearing is that as we move away from this notion of winging it as salespeople and being prepared, it allows us to really exercise that curiosity muscle, because we spent the time thinking about the proper questions to ask instead of trying to wing it in the moment and then leaving there going, crap, I wanted to ask Paul about this. So you've done it.
Yeah.
And because you're prepared, not only can you ask those intelligent questions, but I imagine in your experience that you also then have the courage and confidence then to ask that next question. Say, well, that was interesting, Paul. Tell me more about that. But I imagine if you're not prepared, you're probably not going to have that presence of mind to dig in deeper and be more curious.
Yeah, you start thinking about, what am I going to ask next? What do I need to figure out next?
Yeah.
And you're thinking more about that than being present in the moment. And every time you ask an important question or dig into something that could be really crucial, it's going 3 levels deeper. It's always focusing on, the answer behind that answer, and really getting down to root cause. And that's where we tend to see people do really well, when they have that. Some people have that genuine curiosity and they really want to know. Others just realize, all right, I need to figure out what's really being said. And there's one thing which I think I want to make the point of, because I think it's so important. Preparation is table stakes, but a key thing now is, if I show up prepared and within the first few seconds I let you know that I have researched you, I've done research about the business, or I've got something about the industry, and within the first minute or so I really show you that I know you and I know your business, that gets people to, breaks a pattern. It gets them to lean in, and the rest of your meeting can be the exact same. You can ask the same questions, but because you've invested to show them that you're really interested in doing business together, you then get the energy rises, they're more engaged, and they give better answers to the same questions.
You've built credibility.
Yeah. Good point, Scott. Yeah, it's credibility, right, Paul? That's what you've gone and built right away, that I care. And we know that people only buy from people that they know, like, and trust. And getting to that trust factor is easier said than done. But if you're prepared, I think it elevates that quickly, doesn't it, Paul?
It's the most important way. And we need to be thinking about ways, well, how can we be more trustworthy now? And a great example is, we're going to have a meeting with somebody tomorrow. Well, I would love to know what's top of mind for them. If I send them across the agenda, confirm the appointment, and I just simply ask what's top of mind, half the time, maybe 30% of the time, people turn around and go, yeah, we really want to have a discussion about this, or we want to add that to the agenda. And all of a sudden, I've got to start and point, oh, you've got a team in this area that is not doing what they should be doing. You've got a prospecting issue that you want to spend more time on. And when we talk about the know, like, and trust factor, that could be a video. No reason why that couldn't be a 30-second video on Vidyard or whatever else that you send across. It goes a little bit more.
Yeah, break it down. And also asking of that question, because very often salespeople assume they know what the client wants to hear. And that's the worst thing you can do, right?
Assume, right?
Yeah. And that's terrible. Scott, you like the acronym of ASSUME, right?
I do. And I was just going to say that, this whole notion of trustworthiness, which comes out of preparation, I want to turn out. I got it. I'm not going to say it out loud because I'm professional. But what I wanted to say is, I know that Simon has sometimes struggled with trustworthiness. And how have you overcome that, Simon?
Well, probably not being around people like you, for a start. So it's just, it's who you're friends with, to be honest with you. And I question every day why I'm friends with you. But hey, let's not go there. I just want to pick up, Paul, just on the prepared ownership and prepared execution elements that you talked about. I think there's a joining factor here that joins those two up, that ultimately, makes it easier for people to do. And that's the agenda to the meeting. And often it's something that people just don't put together. You talk to salespeople and they say they're going for a meeting, and you sit down with them and you say, right, what's your agenda? What are you actually going to be telling the client that you want to talk about? What have you established? So that when you go in there, you can say, I've prepared an agenda for us, or I shared an agenda before I came, of these are the things. Has anything changed since I've said that? So that you can really guide the way that conversation goes. Because that agenda is not only going to define you in terms of your ownership and then the execution, but also on the review and the next steps.
Yeah.
And that agenda is going to guide you all the way through it. And I firmly believe that whilst we don't want any salesperson to do the turn up and throw up, we know that customers sometimes, when you go to see them, they will ask you the question, so tell us a bit about you, tell us a bit about your business. And we already know they've got the internet, we already know they've done their work. There's a crazy stat that they're already through the decision-making process.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking to salespeople, I ask them, that they have got to prepare 4 answers to 4 questions if they get asked anything. Number 1, why should I buy? Number 2, same question, why should I buy, but from you? Third question, why should I buy from you over the competition? And number 4, why should I buy from you over the competition right now? And what we have there is a set of preparation questions that allows us to create urgency based on how we've qualified them with timing. It's allowed us to let them know that we understand our competitive set and where we sit and where we trade. It also tells us how we can talk about the key points that are valuable to the client in terms of benefits and value. And you know what? Sometimes people just sit there and they think, I've never done any of that.
Yeah.
And these are sometimes the most experienced people. So when you talk about preparing, even that as an agenda, as part of what you need to discuss, rather than going, well, let's tell you a little bit about our history. Let's not go there.
Wow.
We just want to have some form of framework in place that helps.
And there's Simon leading the discussion and preparing for this podcast. Well done, Simon. You must have read Paul's book.
And also, I have read Paul's book. In fact, my copy of it is actually with another client right now, because I said to them, you need to read this and do a bit more.
Oh, I love book sharing.
Actually, they were. I know. I'm sorry, I've done you out of a sale, Paul. But honestly, they just don't do anything. But I just want to stay with the client a minute. Paul, from a client's perspective, they can feel when a salesperson has not done any preparation. You can feel that. They just rock up. They ask the wrong questions. It's crap. It really is. Is there any way that a salesperson can actually redeem themselves at that stage?
The key question that they need to be asking themselves to potentially redeem themselves, if you start to notice that this is not going quite so well, it's zooming out and going, okay, well, what's the macro decision I want these guys to make, and what's the micro decision? And if we think about macro, well, that's going to be evaluating if our service is going to deliver value and if they should buy from us or not. So typically that's what is going to be, or we're working towards a pilot, proof of concept, whatever it might be. But then from the micro perspective, it's, well, what decision do I want this person to make at the end of this meeting? And if things aren't going so well, how can I actually call that out? Because everybody who has taken time to meet you, it's because they have a problem they think you're going to be able to help them solve. They're not sure that you will, but they think that you might. And if it's a case that you notice things are a mile off the mark, sometimes we need to call that out. Sometimes we need to turn around and say, it feels like maybe this isn't the solution for you, or that maybe this isn't a priority that or something that you require. And, call out the fact that, well, maybe we're going to go and spend our time with someone else. And that then might get them to open up and share a little bit more. Now, if you've really pissed someone off and you've just been really, really bad, they might just say, yeah, grand. Yeah. See you later.
Well, that cuts it short for you, which is good. But what I like, Paul, is the authenticity that you're talking about here. And you're being authentic that, maybe I'm not getting to the root of this and I don't feel that I'm bringing you the value right now. So then you shift gears a little bit. That might break down the walls between the two people as well and have them open up even further. And perhaps, like you say, at that point in a sales call, well, what do you got to lose? You may as well give it a go.
Can I just round out my question here a second as well? Because when I'm with people and you watch them sell, there are some questions that salespeople ask subconsciously that can tell me they have not prepared. And the number one question for me is when they ask the client, what are the next steps for you? And when they ask that question, it shows me that they have not done any form of forward thinking of how they're going to take things forward, what they're going to do for the client, how they're going to help them, support them, solve their problems, what have you, because they should be in a position to be able to say, so let me tell you what the next steps are. And when people are asking these questions where they're putting all of that onto the client, so what are the next steps for you? Well, you should bloody know. You should know what they are. You need to be able to control this because you're putting everything back to them. But actually, what you really are telling is a buyer, especially an experienced buyer or someone who's trained to buy, you're actually telling them that you haven't prepared. And that's a really big question that gives away the game.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's I like that. Paul, what would you comment on that? And is there another key question that you would say salespeople should avoid asking? Are there any bad questions?
Oh well, there's so many bad questions, but I'll jump on Simon's point first. I totally echo that. If you don't have prepared next steps when you're going into a meeting based on it being successful, I mean, you should be very capably able to call out what that next step is, who's going to be involved, when it's going to happen, and why it needs to happen. And if you're working longer sales cycles, at the very start, share the mutual success plan and mutual action plan, just showing that you've planned something out, this is the plan our successful clients follow. The potential next step may be a demo, or maybe a conversation with the wider team, or maybe an introduction to executives.
Right.
We'll come back to that at the end. Don't worry about that now. Let's have a conversation and then continue on. So really just underlining what Simon was talking about. The top professionals do that. Even the ones who we spoke about at the beginning, who just rock up and tend to sell everything, they will be doing that upfront contract, as Sandra would have called it back in the day. And they're doing it subconsciously. Bad questions. I mean, so many. Like what keeps you up at night?
We don't even want to highlight them, right?
What keeps you up at night?
Go and use them. So I want to ask something in regards to the leadership area, which I love delving into.
Yeah.
Now, I like the parallel that's been drawn today in many aspects in regards to preparation in selling and preparation in sports. And many of us are active in different sports and competitive sports, as you mentioned. You've been, Paul, as well. I often get asked as well in preparation for sports as well. I get asked, and all of us have spoken on stage, are you scared? Are you scared before you go on stage, especially? Or are you scared before a big game? And, I readily, I'll admit, no, I'm not scared. Now, I might be excited, maybe even a little nervous, but not scared, because I got taught by different coaches, especially my fight coach, is that you're going to be prepared so that you're not scared. And I like that preparation piece. So you shouldn't be scared if you're fully prepared. What can leaders be doing, Paul, to help their salespeople be more prepared? What's one or two things that leaders should be doing when they're coaching and mentoring salespeople?
Well, one thing that is really, really great for sales leaders to do when they're coaching and mentoring salespeople to be ready for deals is to ask the tough questions before they meet the customer. So to Simon's point earlier, why do they need to do anything? Why now? Why us? Why have they not bought already? If we're going to ask someone for 50K or 100K, is this solving a problem which is going to give 5-10x the value of that back? And I see far too many salespeople try to keep the morale up and really try to just keep their sales team happy, and then they go out and the marketplace.
Where's he gone?
I don't know. Hang on a minute. Sorry, Paul, we had a glitch there. You're back. You're talking.
Oh yeah, I thought I disappeared. I'm in a different place as well. There you go.
The Brady Bunch is
a higher placement, a higher ranking. So you were talking about sales leaders asking the tough questions of the salespeople.
Before, you got to ask the tough questions before they go and do the meetings.
Okay.
You got to expose, the gaps there. You've got to really have them thinking about that and getting them really clear on what they want to achieve. What decision do they want that customer, or do they want to make at the end of that meeting? What information do they need to get along the way? And the other thing which works really well is giving people time to prepare and calling out that there should be preparation time in their calendar. Always get asked how long you should do for that. 25% of the time of the meeting. So if you're meeting someone for an hour, at least 15 minutes where you're really focused and figuring out the gaps and going after that. That can change. If it's a big deal that can really blow your quota out of the water, you spend more time if it's an hour-long meeting, but it should all be commensurate to what it is.
I like that. That's great. Yeah, the leaders need to allow time for salespeople to prepare properly for meetings and even be engaged in it. I know everybody hates role play, but a bit of role play as a customer and ask those tough questions back may help them be further prepared as well. I even like to introduce with team preparation, where you get several other salespeople involved with this, put the key salesperson on the spot and say, well, tell us what your preparation is for this, and others comment in it. It's also a great way for salespeople who tend to have large egos, and I know that from myself, to put it aside and get challenged as to whether you are prepared or not for this upcoming meeting. Back in my boxing days, as Scott mentioned, which I appreciate, it was called sparring. And that was our preparation to make sure that we're ready when we step into the ring for the real fight. So I think that preparation piece is absolutely imperative for leaders to allow time for. Good. Gents, we're wrapping up 35 minutes here with an incredible guest today in Paul. And I just want to thank Paul for coming on our show here and ask you as well, where can people get a hold of you to find out more of the value that you bring to them? Where can they get a hold of you and your book?
The best place to get a hold of me is on LinkedIn. So it is Paul Caffrey on LinkedIn. And if you want to benchmark yourself against prepared sellers and see where your preparation ranks, you go to paulcaffrey.com/benchmark. Okay. 2-3 minutes, you'll be able to see what you do really well and some areas that you can improve. And the book is available Amazon and a lot of large bookshops worldwide, and it's even available in Greek. So if anybody is a native Greek speaker, they can just get a copy in that language.
And apparently
those people who say that sales is all Greek to them.
Oh boy!
and apparently Simon will gladly pass around his book so your sales.
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please share it to more people.
I do. Don't worry, and I will.
That's wonderful. Guys, just been a thrill having you on here, Paul. Thank you. And we look forward to more of your sharing and the value that you bring on a regular basis. So thank you very much for being here. And for our viewers that tuned in, thank you. And yet ones that are rewatching this, we appreciate Paul being on. And who's our next guest coming up, Scott?
Well, some of you may have heard of this gentleman. Our next guest next Friday is someone that Paul mentioned. Mark Hunter will be on the show.
We are very excited. And not only have we got Mark Hunter, we have just signed Meredith Elliott Powell as well.
Wow.
Who will be joining us later in October.
They do come as a team duo sometimes.
Well, these three are all together now, isn't it?
Right?
You associate Paul now with Mark and Meredith.
Well, because don't Mark and Meredith follow you around speaking circuits? I think I saw them with you.
Yeah, you were at the.
It's probably quite the opposite. But what is interesting about that is at the NSA last week in Arizona, big conference, a lot of great breakout sessions that were on where people were sharing what they were doing, how they're running their business successfully, how sales is running, and some things that are working really well. So I'm in one of the breakouts and sitting up the front. I'm all ready for it. Randy Gorgeous delivering this amazing presentation. Mm-hmm. And beside me is Mark and Meredith, and they are still going and learning and adding things to it. And when I said it to them, you guys have done it all. I mean, why are you here? They're like, you just never stop learning. So you're in for a treat for both of them because they are so up to date and so current that I'll be tuning in for sure.
So I just want to jump on that point because I think the point that Paul's making here is super powerful, right? Is that this show and what Paul just talked about is for those professionals who want to keep learning. I learn from Simon and Rick every day. I've learned a lot from this around we're being reminded about the power of preparation. So I think that's a great message that even the people that we consider the pinnacle of this are still always learning.
Yeah, so appreciate that. That's great. And listen, some things we learned today from Paul. The ownership of being prepared is essential. Preparation is table stakes now, salespeople. So get on it. Lean in with that curiosity. Make sure you ask what's top of mind, and make sure that you're preparing so that you're prepared, not scared. Thanks for being on the Sales Slap podcast today. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
Thank you for attending the Sales Slap podcast. Feel free to reach out to your hosts, Rick, Simon, and Scott, and our guests from this episode for more information. We look forward to seeing you next time.